A new report in Vanity Fair shines a light on just how much power Jared Kushner wields in the administration and how much he doesn't give a damn about people dying from coronavirus as long as they're Democrats. So now this is, again, from Vanity Fair here. And really, it's a group, apparently a group of business leaders had met back in March at FEMA to discuss manufacturing more PPE, masks, gloves, face shields, all that stuff that at the time was in very short supply. And so that's pretty important, okay? Now, during the meeting, government officials urged these business leaders to return the next day to meet with Jared Kushner to discuss what the government could do to help facilitate that. For example, doing the Defense Production Act in order to also make sure that these companies would get compensated for switching over their production lines to PPE, okay? Things like that. Now, these business leaders, they did meet with Kushner, and here's what happened. Kushner, apparently right off the bat, laid down basically this edict and saying that the federal government is not going to lead this response. That is not our job. They said literally, quote, "It's up to the states to figure out what they want to do." Now, that shouldn't surprise you. It didn't surprise me because that's the same thing Donald Trump had been saying at that time, okay? Now, the question for me is, well, did Donald Trump come up with that position or did Jared Kushner come up with that position? Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here? I'm kind of curious to know. So now, when you look at the little details, apparently even where Kushner is sitting, right, you can kind of tell that he wants to be in charge. Kushner was actually seated in a chair that was taller than the others around the conference table and was actually running a shadow task force that ran in parallel to the one led by Vice President Mike Pence. That shadow task force actually had a lot of power. Now, those private sector representatives said that they wanted to produce PPE if the federal government promised to buy them. And they wanted the president to invoke the Defense Production Act to make that happen very quickly. We were all saying, quote, "Mr. Kushner, if you want to fix this problem for PPE and ventilators, there's a path to do it, but you have to make a policy change," recalled one person who attended the meeting. Kushner then got very aggressive and insisted that they didn't understand how government worked as well as he did, although that attendee said his arguments made no sense. So, challenge Kushner, and he turns into, and look, I've seen this description before, he's basically mini Trump. And so that right there is the most Trumpian thing I've seen. Dude, nobody could ever understand government as much as I do. I understand it better than anybody else. So don't tell me what to do. Okay? It's Donald Trump, but without any of the personality or the flair, just the anger. Okay? And just a narcissism. So now Kushner, according to one person that was there, he said, quote, "It felt like Kushner was the president. He sat in the chair and was clearly making the decisions." One attendee also told Kushner that Americans were bidding against each other for the limited supply of PPE, and that person explained that businesses that wanted to help were looking for leadership from the federal government. Kushner's response to that was, quote, "Free markets will solve this. That's not the role of the government." Free markets, guys. The free markets will solve this. I mean, 6 million people in America are infected, over 200,000 people dead. We still don't have enough tests for everybody. 40 million people are unemployed. Surely the free market did not solve anything at all. And by the way, if the government's role is not to help its citizens during a pandemic, then seriously, what is the point of government? I mean, I know some people will say that, ironically, well, there's no role. I'm so smart. We should abolish government. Well, that's ridiculous. Why not, if you hold that position, find an island somewhere with no government and see how well you do? I mean, surely you can get somebody to build your roads and create your anti-government paradise, right? I mean, if it's so bad here in America, Well, why haven't you done so already? Oh, right. It's because most people don't want to live in a new neo-feudal bullshit paradise that is extremely right-wing. But anyway, that person agreed that, yes, open markets could solve some problems or many problems, but said right now, because of the crisis, the system was breaking. Because pandemic response and similar crisis is why we have a government in the first place, in order to handle that stuff. Now, that same person then pointed to a CNN report about New York and Andrew Cuomo. Now, at the time, Andrew Cuomo was incredibly desperate for supplies for New York, as they were getting hit incredibly hard at the time. So now, Kushner said, that's CNN bullshit. They lie. You're saying they're lying about Cuomo trying to get more aid for his state and failing, trying to get the administration to give more aid to the state. I see. Right. But he also said, and this is very telling, his people are going to suffer, and that's their problem. And added, Cuomo didn't pound the phones hard enough to get the PPE for his state. So, wait. So, there wasn't enough PPE available, right? And the federal government at the time was making the states fight against each other. And now he goes and points at Cuomo and says, well, he should have gotten the phone harder. I mean, that's his fault that, people, it's strictly his fault that people are suffering in New York. And by the way, those are his people, so why should I care? They don't see blue states as part of America or cities, right? I mean, Kushner does not look like he looks at the most one of the most populous cities in the country. He looks at it and says, not my people, their people. We don't care about them. They don't matter to him. They don't matter to Donald Trump. Understand that they don't care about you. Even if you're a conservative living in New York and LA, right? He doesn't care about you. They don't care about you. They have no empathy for their fellow Americans. Now, following that, one attendee did tell Vanity Fair, quote, that's when I was like, we're screwed. That would be an accurate assessment. Now, others lamented the fact that it was a missed opportunity. Quote, we had so much potential to commandeer against us. We had a real system for contact tracing, the world's best mobile engineers on standby. There was a real opportunity to have a coordinated response. At the time, one attendee said, who remains angry, by the way, at the government's inaction on COVID, says, I thought of it just as blind capitalism and extreme libertarian ideals gone wrong. In hindsight, it's not crazy to think it was some purposeful belief that it was okay if Cuomo had a tough go of it because New York is a blue state. Which, of course, makes sense. Another attendee told Vanity Fair that it seemed very clear that Kushner lacked a sense of urgency because the virus was hitting blue states the hardest. We were flabbergasted. That person said, I basically had an out-of-body experience. Where am I? What happened to America? Well, I hate to break it to you, but that is America. Right now, we are so incredibly polarized. Remember, I pointed out before, where you've got at least a third of Americans that don't give a shit about the other two-thirds. Those are the Trump voters. Those are the extreme Republicans and the libertarians. They don't care. And in some cases, like the people parading around Target telling people to take off their masks, they're actually trying to get people killed. It's amazing. Or at least trying to get people infected with COVID-19. They don't see them. They don't see people who disagree with them politically as human beings. Eric Trump, he remarked, he was in an interview with Hannity. He said, Democrats aren't even human. That's what we're dealing with in this country. That's who these people are. They don't see them as human, and they don't care about them. Again, he literally let people die in New York because it's a blue state. If Obama ever did anything like this, there would be a billion investigations. He'd have been impeached already. Or if Hillary Clinton were president, right? And 10,000 people died of coronavirus. Because obviously coronavirus was going to happen. And if 10,000 people died, just a fraction of what we've seen from COVID-19, you know what the Republican response would be? It'd be Benghazi times a billion. Okay? They'd never let it go. Investigation, impeach Hillary, lock her up. She's killing Americans. Hillary lied. People died. 200,000, though, dead under Trump. And the number will continue to go up, by the way. Not a big deal. Not a big deal.